All right, we are ready to get started. Hello and welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for joining our webinar today. Connect your DAM and PIM in 2024 to elevate product content. So my name is Brian Cavanaugh, and I'm a Director of Global Field and Customer Marketing. We're going to get into our content very shortly after I just go through a couple things more about housekeeping and giving you an idea of our other speakers here, each of whom will introduce themselves as the presentation goes on. So first off, we're joined by Andy Diddick, who's the SVP of Sales and Marketing at Intara. And I'm also joined by Cole Ernest, who is a Senior Customer Success Manager at InRiver, who has been crucial with us in building this story over the last couple of years, and that's exactly what I'm going to get into next. But first, let me just, right off the bat, we wanted to get a sense of the audience before we've even introduced any of our concepts. Just a simple question: what best describes your goal this year with product content? And we've got 4 options there. And you'll notice this is a theme between, we've got 2 polls, this one and then one at the end. We've got a Q&A section and there at the bottom right of your webinar platform, because we want this to be a discussion, right? We want this to be interactive. We've probably talked to some of you, if not all of you on the call, in different capacities between Binder, InRiver, and Intara. But we want to keep that conversation going and just get a sense from each of you. And the answer to this first question may even help us, in understanding where you're at this year. So let's go ahead. If y'all just give it another 30 seconds here. I don't have the Jeopardy music, but if I did, I would play it, and then we'll wrap up right now. All right, so we're going to look for a little more participation as the session goes on. Great. So let's get into the agenda, what we're going to talk about here today. So I'm going to introduce Binder very quickly. For those that don't know us, same's going to happen for InRiver and then Intara a little later. We want to give you a view of some of the trends that we are all seeing, right? Respectively, each of us on the call here today talks to customers every day in some capacity that has different goals around their product content, their digital storefront, their DAM, and their digital transformations. We want to give you a view of the ecosystem as we each see it. And then I want to get into some other concepts around the importance of leveraging expertise for a given project, whatever its goals may be. And then we'll conclude with customer examples. And like I said, we encourage questions throughout, but especially at the end, we'll each take some time to answer any questions that you all may have. So I know some are familiar, but for those who aren't, Binder is a leading digital asset management platform, and we're proud that last year we were named an InRiver Alliance Partner of the Year at the Pinpoint event in Sweden. So I won't get into all the numbers listed here. You can see our position on the enterprise G2 grid for the DAM space there. And if I look at some of these numbers here at the bottom, some of them, like users and assets, are core to an enterprise DAM, and we see those growing all the time. Then the second 2 metrics, API calls monthly and then assets transformed monthly, are 2 of a number of metrics that speak a lot more to the delivery of assets and the delivery to downstream applications. And that's what we've really seen a trend on. And what's going to be a theme here today is the importance of a connected ecosystem and the importance of getting asset delivery right to any platform, really. And in this case, clicking into product information management and all that goes in to that. And especially important to the relationship with InRiver is the fact that as of January 2023, we officially became under the same portfolio, having the same majority investor in Thomas H. Lee Partners. And so we were thrilled. I mean, InRiver already had a majority investment when Binder did this deal and announced this and started working with THL. And so I think it just speaks to the alignment between the 2 organizations, seeing the market in a similar fashion, believing in the same things, namely the importance of content to a brand's go-to-market strategy and how it engages with customers, and the importance of exceptional content experiences and how that can be a brand differentiator. So again, it's been great so far to be involved with Thomas H. Lee and to be closer connected to InRiver. So with that, let me just give it to Cole real quick to give you this InRiver view at a glance.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Brian. Appreciate it. Just for a quick intro on my part, I'm Cole Ernest. I am a Senior Customer Success Manager at InRiver. I've been working at InRiver for about 4 years now. I started off on the pre-sales side, providing demos and really diving into the use cases and the reasons that companies come to buy a PIM. And now I'm on the post-sale side, and I'm actually looking at how we're achieving success using the PIM. So kind of seen both sides and talked to a lot of customers about these very things. So excited to share with you today. In River, at a glance, we are started in 2007, so way in the infancy of PIM. We started in Malmo, Sweden. We service manufacturers, retailers, distributors all over the map. We've got a really strong partner network that are absolutely experts in the PIM space and in individual industries across North America and Europe. We are in the SAP, Microsoft, and Salesforce global ecosystem. They are alliance partners of ours. And in some cases, we're the preferred PIM there. And then I think the other thing that I really want to point out on this slide is the retail channel partners. So getting information out is a big piece of PIM. And so we've put a lot of time in getting the relationships in place with some of these the places where you're trying to push your content, which is a big important theme that we'll touch on a little bit more as we move forward. I'll kick it over back to you, Brian, to discuss a little bit about where DAM sits in the ecosystem.
Yeah, and I just want to throw this up here quickly. I imagine some folks on the call might be familiar with this kind of view, some maybe not, but you're going to see a couple different diagrams throughout the session right now, and that's on purpose, right? Because there is such a thing as a DAM-centric view, such a thing as a PIM-centric view, and then a view of how do they come together, or how is that maybe unique to an individual organization's workflows. But what I'll call out here is, you notice the create side, as we call it, with creative tools, project management feeding in to the DAM, and then the DAM being the center in this instance, and then delivering all assets to downstream applications. And so today's theme, of course, is PIM, but this is kind of the view when I think of how binders, customers, binders, champions, those who are setting up the DAM, how they see assets flow and what they are building. And I wouldn't say that everyone has every single platform here exactly dialed in and future-proofed and modernized, but this is really starts to define the roadmap that a lot of our customers are showing us, right? And so with that, let's get into some trends and some other information as it pertains specifically to PIM and initiatives around PIM. So Cole and I were actually building these, and I know Andy's got some similar themes as well, and I just want to touch on a couple things, because when it comes to building a digital storefront, enabling product content as well as the brand and campaign content that brings products to life around product content, this is what we hear most often from marketing leaders, like yourself, some that are on the call, right? First and foremost, leveraging AI, not just for AI's sake, but as part of a broader corporate strategy of how it's going to be used. And the best examples that I've seen is where marketing, let's say, or content is one pillar amongst several others of how an organization is going to use AI effectively and responsibly. And what we hear a lot is tangible applications are now coming to the forefront, where maybe last year there was a little bit of hype or a little bit of just buzz, but finding productivity game changers, maximizing your existing data are some themes that we hear our customers enhancing existing content, which I know, Cole, you'll talk about as well. That's really what we hear, from customers most often and having the most impact. And so, Cole, I know you've got some thoughts as well specific to AI.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that you really hit the nail on the head with not just doing AI for AI's sake. I think a couple years ago, that was a lot of people were hearing the mandates of, how are we using AI? How are we actually leveraging this? And back then, we were all trying to figure it out. But I think you're right. We've taken a big step forward in actually adding real productivity gains, real automation throughout the product journey. When it comes to AI, I think it's super complementary between PIM and DAM. I know that with DAM, there's a lot of stuff as far as auto tagging images, auto categorizing, things like that, taking an image and adding a lot of automation based on that. And then on the PIM side, I'll get into it a little bit more later in the presentation, but it's really taking attributes and taking the data and the things that you have in your data model already, utilizing that in an automated way to create text that can really help sell your product at scale. Descriptions, keywords, detailed bullets, all these things can be created using AI using what's already available inside your PIM or wherever it may live.
Absolutely. And then, some of these other trends, composable architecture, that is really what more and more brands are embracing. And I imagine some might be nodding their head, because if you're using Binder and InRiver as one of, the groups who are probably on this call, then you're definitely embracing that already, right? Or you've taken the journey maybe off of one kind of suite approach and more of the stack approach, composable systems being best practice. And then consolidating platforms, breaking down silos, it's an interesting dynamic going on right now, but what we hear a lot when it comes to consolidating platforms tends to be across business units or different areas of the go-to-market function. So when it comes to manufacturing and retail, a lot of them typically are creating content and sending content out to market very differently historically on their B2B side as well as their B2C side. But to the extent to which you can share resources and combine workflows, break down those silos, and really go to market with one brand and one system of record across each stage of the MarTech stack, then that is a ton of efficiency gain. Also introduces a lot more content reuse and brand consistency. And then the last one that I want to mention here is achieving these new levels of maturity regardless of where you might be at as an organization or where you're at in your digital transformation. Because what we hear is a lot of customers who maybe already have Binder installed and have InRiver installed, their digital goals this year is to leverage a connector or to create that sort of two-way share of data and content. But then other organizations, they might only be using one, right? And they're still in the evaluation stage of optimizing or maybe getting rid of a legacy platform and really doing an RFP this year for a best-in-breed type solution for DAM and or PIM, right? So the journey, I think some on the call would agree, the journey's never really over, right? You just achieve new levels of maturity. You find ways to leverage something like AI or plug in more integrations and go from there. And then, Cole, I'll open it back up to you on these trends or other trends maybe that you hear of.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Brian. I think those two in the middle, embracing composable architecture and breaking down silos, are huge. They have been for a long time now, but they're just accelerating at an increased rate recently. I think the InRiver just joined the MOC Alliance, which is a non-profit group that's basically promoting a lot of these things of open architecture and future-proofing all of the systems that you're using, and making sure that you get the best in breed of each one. So you truly can be that composable. What MOC stands for is microservices, API first, cloud native, and headless. So really embodying those two trends and making sure that you use a PIM for what a PIM is supposed to do, you use a DAM for what a DAM is supposed to do, and you connect them and make sure that those workflows are seamless between them. And that's kind of, I think, across the board for the people's MarTech stacks. Next thing I want to just briefly touch on is I think sustainability is really key theme this upcoming year. In Europe, you have the DPP regulation coming down the pipe, Digital Product Passport, which is actually going to soon be forcing companies by law to expose a lot more of their supply chain data to the consumer. So you're going to have to start capturing more attributes. It's going to get a lot more complicated. There's going to be an explosion of attributes that you're going to have to expose to the consumer. And I think some of that stuff is going to be eventually coming to North America. So we're seeing a lot of different customers prepare for that hit to make sure that they don't have any downtime, and that they're really being proactive about making sure that they're ahead of these laws, which are kind of being written as we speak. So we're all trying to figure it out together.
Absolutely. So thanks for that, Cole. Really couldn't agree more. And so let's keep it going here on how we see it, right, between Binder and InRiver specifically, which of course comprises DAM and PIM. But this is really our two views. And if these bullets are helpful for anyone, especially as you might be explaining it internally, or you might expect two teams or more than two teams to maybe come together to create more of what you consider a single solution or a joint offering within the digital storefront and the product content strategy, then we would love to talk further. And specifically some of these slides, if you haven't seen them already, because I know some customers have, but if you haven't, then these will be shared afterwards. as well, if helpful. So let me give it to you, Cole, to kind of walk through the PIM view and some of the key pillars and principles of where you see product content.
Absolutely. Thanks, Brian. So this slide, I think, is a great starting point. You can see that the PIM and DAM are really two sides of the same coin. It's what do you actually use to sell a product? What makes something stand out? What differentiates you? On the PIM side, you've got largely attribution data. On the DAM side, you've got the content, media, things like that. So obviously, combining these two things together, creating sort of a seamless integration between the two is going to create a lot of different synergies as you go to market and try to build not just your own digital storefront, but as you push to other retailers and marketplaces and data pools and different things. So I've got a slide here, which is going to be sort of another similar, ecosystem slide. As Brian mentioned, we're all going to maybe have our own slightly different versions of this. I was joking before that everybody's going to put their own in the middle, right? So this one might be a little different, but I think very complementary still. On the left side there, you've got all of the things that generally feed a PIM, things like the ERP, your PLM perhaps, and definitely a DAM. We're going to be pulling information from all of those places to centralize everything in one PIM. And I think maybe 10, 15 years ago, that was really the main use case for a PIM. That was really the value that everybody got, just having everything in one place. But that's no longer the case, right? You have to do a lot more than that in order to really bring value. And so inside the PIM, there's going to be a lot of enrichment taking place. You're going to get all your products ready to go live. You're going to be taking those assets that were created in the DAM and then doing things like relating them to your products and then pushing them to different places from within the PIM. And then on the right side there, you see all the different places where you may need your product content. Retailers, marketplaces, print, web, e-commerce, all of this. Now, again, 10, 15 years ago, a lot of people were trying to manage some of this stuff inside your e-commerce platform, maybe just utilizing the digital catalog aspect. But the problem there lies within what if now you want to get this content to a print catalog, or you want to go to Amazon. Now you're having to recreate that each time. And to Brian's point earlier, we're trying to reuse the work as many times as possible rather than having to recreate the reel for each single channel. And that's where really a big value of the PIM comes into play. Now, this slide is really going into what happens in that middle square from the last slide. What are really the main buckets of functionality or big value drivers for a PIM? There's a lot on this slide. Don't worry, we'll send it out after. But really just the four things I want to hit on at the top level are collect, enrich, distribute, and evaluate. These are the four main things that a PIM is going to do. And each one is enhanced when you add media to the equation and when you do integrate with a DAM like binder. So on the collect side, we're pulling data in from all the different places where it comes from: suppliers, spreadsheets, ERP, PLM, MDM, wherever it may come from. We're pulling it into one place and giving you the ability to enrich it, to maintain your taxonomies, to manage the media. Now, on the DAM side, that's where you're really creating your assets and transforming your media and doing all of the things that you need to do at an enterprise level as far as media management is concerned. And then when you pull that into the PIM, what you're able to do is really manage that metadata and relate that media to a product so that you can publish those two things together when you get to that distribution aspect, that third piece, which is getting all of your data to your e-commerce platform, print, marketplaces, dealers, data pools, all these places that need data in a very different format. So what the PIM is able to do is map and transform that data, create your assortments and taxonomies that map to these different channels, and then with the push of a button, make sure that you're pushing your data out seamlessly and able to maintain your updates in a similar fashion. And then once that data leaves your four walls, it's time to evaluate it. The job's not done. And I think this is where In-River differentiates, is the ability to have a best-in-class digital shelf analytics solution that actually looks to see, did the image get there correctly? Did that description get there as intended? We all know retailers, marketplaces out there, the Amazons of the world, they're going to change your content sometimes just for SEO purposes, for uniqueness sake. So it is really important to not just send it with confidence, but also audit what's happening out there to then take those insights you're seeing on what's actually happening out there in the real world and collect that information back, and then use the insights that you gain in order to kind of start the process all over again. So you're constantly optimizing your content to make sure that it's actually having the impact that you hope. So I now just want to dive into 3 of those aspects a little bit more deeply and talk about why specifically having the media throughout this process and getting connected to a binder, to a DAM, is really going to enhance the process of using a PIM throughout the entire journey here. So when it comes to enrichment, I've got sort of a value add of having PIM and DAM together, and then a trend that it's going to be addressing down below. So the value of having the media when you're enriching your products is very simple. You need that context. You need to know, a lot of times what the product looks like is definitely going to impact how you describe it. You know, what other attributes you're adding to it. So it really gives you the full kind of 360 view of the product and helps you market it in a way that allows your users to be a lot more efficient. And trying to do this in another system or without a DAM connected is, I think, going to lead to some frustrations in those silos that Brian was talking about earlier. Now, the trend that I want to talk about is the AI enrichment. The PIM and DAM really work together well with different aspects of AI. Some of the stuff you can do from an AI perspective in a DAM, you can pull into the PIM as attribution, and then use the attribution that you've pulled into the DAM through a connector to feed into our ChatGPT integration to, again, add more automation at the touch of a button to create descriptions and anything that you need to in order to help sell the product. Second piece is the syndication, the actual distribution piece. The value here is having one source from which to send both your images and your product descriptions and your product attribution. The trend here is the channel explosion. You have to be across so many different channels to meet customers. There's so many different places to send it, and there's so many different requirements at each one of those channels. So it's not just about mapping the data to make sure that that lines up correctly. It's also transforming the images in order to make sure that they meet the requirements of these channels. There's so many things to get right. So you need a PIM to get one part right, a DAM to get the other part right, and then connect the two so that they can be sent together. And again, at the touch of a button, make sure that everything gets to the proper place in the proper format. And the final piece is the evaluation. You want to have your images in the PIM so that you can send them from the PIM so that they can be a reference material when you go out and scrape these websites to make sure that they're showing up accurately. So a lot of what I'm seeing from a customer standpoint is people wanting to tell hyper-specific stories to reach a very specific type of demographic on specific channels. You may want different images on one retailer than you want on another retailer. And that might be different by product category, by channel, and you might have them in a different order to tell a different product story to a different end consumer. So we're able to really manage all of that and index that correctly, and then evaluate if it's actually being sent in the nuanced ways that you're hoping to tell your product story. So now I will kick it back over to Brian. Thanks for the time here to talk about aligning with broader initiatives.
Absolutely, and you're not off the hook yet, Cole, because if questions come in, then we're gonna tee you up, and that's also my reminder for anyone on the call. If you have questions thus far, we'd love for you to just start dropping them in. Again, sometimes we're happy to answer them in real time, but absolutely at the end, we'll take a look at all the different questions that have come into the Q&A function to answer for you. Okay, so one of what I've seen, and why we wanted to come together on this webinar with Binder, InRiver, and Intara was usually a project that includes DAM and PIM as part of a broader initiative, usually a digital transformation, building a better commerce storefront or others. And it's important then to leverage expertise, and what Intara is going to go through when I hand it over to Andy in just a second is a holistic approach, right, and more of a solution-oriented mindset. And so let me just hand it over, Andy, to you now, so you can give a little bit of insight into your client base and your expertise.
Thanks for that, Brian, and thanks, Cole, both of you, for some great overviews on looking at things from a DAM perspective and a PIM perspective as well. Looks like I hit a button twice there. I'm with Intara. My name is Andy Diddick. I've got over 20 years of experience in the digital space, And Intara is a systems integrator that specializes in product experience management. That means a lot of different things these days to different folks, but at the core of it is the management of product data and product assets across a client's ecosystem. We serve a lot of global manufacturers, a lot of global brands, whether that's apparel or consumer electronics, industrial manufacturing, as well as industrial and consumer distribution centers and we're helping them to sell more products faster, which is a pretty easy mission to grasp. We've got some really great credentials. We've got over 1 billion product data points that are under management, and we've had some really substantial ROI generated from our engagements. We do specialize in PIM, DAM, e-commerce, as well as multi-channel sales enablement for these types of clients who are selling through different channels. So that really gives us a very broad perspective on what it means to put these systems in place and some of the things to look out for. So with just a few minutes, we'll be talking about the differences between them and why they're put in place and what it really means to start looking at them as an integrated set of systems. So first of all, I think it's important to note that DAM and PIM, they've both been around for some time. We've got decades of experience in both. And they're typically brought in to solve different problems. DAM is brought in to solve primarily issues around asset creation, assets being images or documents or 3D assets, videos, and management of their creation, distribution of them, and then their management of their life cycle throughout an organization too. So when do they get retired? When do rights expire on management of images, that type of thing. And PIM is typically brought in to manage product data as a middle layer between an ERP or a PLM, other source of data, and then incorporates syndication and then lately digital shelf analytics as well to enhance that data, that product data, and get it out to the proper channels. So even though both of these have been around for a long time, it's only been recently that the two have really needed to be tied together in a way other than the PIM gets hooked up and images get fed in for products, and that's really typically what most integrations look like at a high level. But because these are brought in for different reasons, they're also typically owned by different groups within an organization, which can make having a unified data governance strategy something that's very difficult, or just it's brand new to most organizations. They don't know how to do it, which I'll talk about here in just a moment. So from our point of view in looking at how these systems are deployed across these brands, it's important to note that every situation is unique. We're experts in this space, and one definition of being an expert is that you're brought in to solve the same problem over and over again. So we're learning very in depth in how these organizations are structured, and we are seeing that every company is unique. Their setups are unique, their tech stacks are unique, their products are unique, and so are their organizational structures. But the challenges are shared. Namely, one, that there is market confusion. There are really great DAM and PIM providers like River and Binder on the call that are adding features that bleed into the others' technology. And there's good reasons for that, because sometimes a DAM user is pure play and they need a little bit of PIM functionality, or a PIM user is pure play and they need a little bit of DAM functionality. But that can result in some confusion. There are also a couple of players on the market that have all-in-one solutions that claim to do everything. We're going to talk about why that should be viewed with some skepticism for your use case in just a minute. There is a large maturity curve for both applications, meaning that both of these have a lot of depth to their systems. You have specialists now. You can get certifications and professional development around just both of these disciplines. And we already mentioned that they're owned by different groups to solve different problems. But the biggest challenge that we're often brought in to solve is the human element, meaning that as you attempt to make adjustments to an organization's PIM and DAM and data strategy, you're dealing with a lot more than just technology challenges. You're dealing with the way that products are created and their data is shared and marketed throughout an entire organization, which is people, process, and technology. So coming in with some experience on how to do that and how to make that happen, that's absolutely got to be part of your playbook if you're going to make these two systems work together. And then the last thing I'll touch on is that the channel hyperspecificity, that's a mouthful. But the reason that you should be skeptical of all-in-one solutions is that channels have such specific requirements that are growing. DPP, sustainability, there were two things that were brought up around sustainability legislation that's coming. There are a host of other initiatives that are on the docket in states and countries all over the world that are saying you've got to provide this information or that information. And the need to do that at an asset level for digital asset management versus product attributes or data about a product is quite different depending on what those requirements are. So because of the depth of these products, having one that claims to do it all is something that I would definitely view with a healthy degree of skepticism. So I know this is hardly a how-to, and on our short webinar, that wasn't really the promise, but what I can say is that any type of initiative that you have that you're going to start in integrating these two systems together has got to begin with some really healthy analysis of what your requirements are and have a partner who knows how to do this in order to make it productive. And then lastly, I'll share with you a slide of how these two systems work together. I mentioned earlier that a lot of times what an integration looks like is DAM pushes images into PIM. And I think most folks on this call who are in either a DAM or a PIM silo have that basic integration in place. You can't sell a product, be it industrial or consumer, without having product images. Doesn't matter if it's a Bolt or it's an iPad. But what we are building out, and I would say this is only present in really mature forms in the top 3 to 5% of companies on the market right now. But I guarantee you, if we have this webinar in a year, that number is going to be 10% or 20% because this is the future. It's the only way that it's possible to keep up with the channel demand, is that we have a real integration between DAM and PIM, where DAM is actually pushing product taxonomy into the PIM so that product marketers and product managers don't have to come up with that and manage it on their own. It's actually coming from a higher level with DAM. And then similarly, PIM is pushing product information back into the DAM around product images because the outlet for imagery or assets like safety data sheets or videos or the other things we talked about, it isn't always an e-commerce site. Sometimes there's a sales team internally that needs to use it, or there's a million other applications we could discuss. And having real approved enriched product data that can flow in around an image, even if it's a lifestyle image that features a product, which we have for a lot of our global consumer brands, can be invaluable for a marketing team that's putting a post up on social media. They don't have to go dig the product specs or the proper model number. It's all coming in from the PIM as the source of truth. So without going into a ton more detail, that's really the gist of the next level of integration between DAM and PIM. It's something that saves empirically a ton of time, which equals a lot of money. And it also is reducing errors and liabilities for companies across the globe. So this is really exciting about where things are going, and happy to share more information about this or answer any questions we have as we have time. And with that, I'll toss things back to you, Brian.
Yeah, and on that note of the how-to, Andy, I know you said we would almost need to do a whole other hour just on some how-tos around these concepts. But given that, I think our respective teams are on calls every day talking about just exactly that, right? And we have resources, some of which are available in the webinar portal here, but a lot more resources that get into more of the how-to, the steps, the framework. So I encourage everybody, some of whom we have relationships with, some maybe are just learning about us for the first time here today, to engage further, because if that is of interest to you, there's more than enough resources that we would love to work with you on over time. And specific to in Tara, I would just say, if someone on the call has a DAM or PIM initiative, but maybe needs that direction, ownership, or frameworks, please, I'd consider looking at Tara's services in more depth if you haven't already. And on that theme of leveraging expertise, there's just one other group that I want to mention is CTAC, who is also a system integrator and one we work with here. Right now, I'm in not so sunny Amsterdam, which is where Binder headquarters are, right? And CTAC is native to the Netherlands and operates a lot here in Europe. And again, it's on that theme of leveraging expertise, and even down to the digital product passports. Cole had mentioned it's going to hit Europe first, or there's these requirements in 2026 where every brand that manufactures a product will need to have this sort of organized. And so, CTAC has been part of some of these implementations, these big projects. And I look at some of these logos here, many of whom are binder customers. And these projects are not successful without a group of trusted partners that bring in that expertise. So again, on that theme of a holistic approach, a consultant's view, knowing how these projects go because they've been at it for a long time, CTAC is also one where if you've got that project, and again, depending on where you are in the world, CTAC would be a resource that you're going to want to learn from and work with here. So that is the holistic approach, and it's so important when you think about the joint offering and the joint value proposition. How does DAM and PIM work cohesively within an organization? So on the spirit of projects done well, and on the notion of joint DAM and PIM implementations, let's get into, as promised, 2 customer examples. And so the first, I'm going to hand it to Andy here, because this was an Antara-driven project with Binder in River, to talk about Columbus McKinnon.
Sure thing. Thanks, Brian. So Columbus McKinnon, they were founded in 1894. They're a very large designer, manufacturer, and marketer of intelligent motion solutions. So they're in the materials handling space. Think big cranes, specialty equipment that's used to move containers and industrial equipment around. And they've got a lot of products and a lot of challenges that are shared by industrial manufacturers of getting complex products out to market through complex channels. Together, in working with them, we've been able to get 76,000 SKUs and 15,000 resources into the In-River PIM, and over 16,000 assets into the Binder DAM. And this is a great example where we started in a quote unquote traditional way. We began with a PIM implementation and then a DAM implementation that were separate. Both successful initiatives, and on their own right, both had really great ROI that was measurable. And but then we recently completed a phase 2, where that example I showed earlier of taxonomy flowing from one direction to the other and product data flowing from one direction to the other has actually been completed and is in flight. So they're experiencing really big productivity gains, and it's something that we're seeing repeated over and over again as we deploy this similar strategy between PIM and DAM. So they're just a tremendous success story, and we're really looking forward to seeing what the next year brings.
Great. Thank you, Andy. And, we always say, like, okay, your go-to-market complexity, which spells the need for, sometimes a system of record. If you times your number of products, times your number of brands, times your number of markets, times your number of language, it gets to feel like an exponential number or complexity pretty quickly. And I think this is outlined here with some of these, levels of scale that they have in their go-to-market. And then on the next example, what I'm going to talk about is a spirits house of brands. And so this is a company, again, they're a worldwide leader, top 5 in the world when it pertains to spirits brands. And as you can imagine, they have unique challenges because they have over 200 brands worldwide in their portfolio, selling in over 160 countries. And so there were 2 things at play here when they were really looking to scale how they go to market online and distributing product information and product content globally. One was in that vertical, for those who are familiar, it's very much an indirect model, meaning they're heavily reliant on distributors or other retail endpoints, not necessarily just setting up an e-commerce shop to sell beer or whiskey or whatever else, even though that is a growing trend with Instacart and Drizzly and platforms like that. So mostly an indirect model, right? They have to show up on a lot of places at once, and across that many brands and that many countries, just content was living in silos. It was a different flow and sometimes felt like a different brand for the B2B side versus more of the B2C side that was more about advertising to the end customer. And there's a lot of efficiencies to be gained in more consolidating even that view. And then the other part that we hear a lot in a multi-brand global organization is if they've made acquisitions, sometimes one brand has been using a platform or a set of solutions that is not necessarily even the approach of the corporate level. And so we hear a lot of instances where, okay, you acquire a brand and maybe the parent company hasn't even selected a global system of record for DAM or PIM. But that's what I meant when I was talking about consolidating platforms, getting off of legacy systems. CIOs, even if they have 200 brands, they prefer to just have one DAM, one PIM, and so on, and organize all the brand content and the brand experience effectively. So that comes into play here, where a lot of global organizations, if they don't have 200 brands, they still have maybe a couple dozen, depending on their product lines, and that central system of record, while also enabling individual brand content, is very, very important. And I'll just give a view of that again with diagrams. Some are more a view of the platforms more in general, like the categories or where we see information flowing. In this case, it was specific, where this is what they drew up, and you can see, on this notion of a joint solution or a joint approach, that the DAM and the PIM were referred to as the content hub, and that there were these workflows or these different steps and individuals along the way, such as the content creators and approvers, as opposed to the client side, or where does this content go? And this is what they installed, right, for that global level of scale across a very, very complex go-to-market. Great, so we're just about to wrap up here, and I see questions coming in, which I'm excited to start mentioning. But first, now that we've talked about all this, we've talked about the DAM-centric kind of view, or what maybe binder customers start listing as their priorities, the PIM-centric view, what in-river customers maybe start listing at their priorities, where do they converge, and then how do you develop a joint view, as both Cole and Andy mentioned. We want to help you all out, and so I would encourage everybody to just fill this out, because depending on what stage you're at or what your priorities are, we'd love to help in a more tailored way, right? And I know that we have relationships or we're in dialogue with some of you. So again, we want to help. We want to have more of a custom solution approach, because it will be different based on your vertical, size of company, as well as where you're at in your particular digital journey. So I'll just give it another minute here, and then I'll start teeing up some questions.
Yeah, Brian, while we're waiting for this to get filled out, you mentioned something important on the last case study about a CIO having a vision for a content hub. That's something that is remarkably rare in the client base that we deal with, and as we survey the industry in general, because we typically don't see a unified approach to those two. Again, we do see them as point solutions in most organizations, and there's not typically a chief product experience management officer in most orgs. So I think part of our work sometimes, and part of the work of the attendees on this call, is to create the use case for that greater integration and to get a better understanding of what that benefit could be, because there's often an idea that and it's growing, but there is often an idea that we're checking the box. We've got a successful PIM, we've got a successful DAM, and there isn't a shared understanding yet, but we're working to change the world, that there are huge benefits to moving beyond that. So I think that is a pretty visionary example, and same with Columbus McKinnon, we're going to see more and more of in 2024 beyond.
Absolutely, and like I had said at the beginning, that view can almost feel intimidating, but it's more of where organizations see themselves going, right? I've not heard of too many organizations that have every single platform and every single flow of assets and data perfectly ironed out and sort of built as they envision it in their head. But having a vision of it is a start, as is having a game plan, which is of course one of the themes that we mentioned today as well. So appreciate everybody filling this out. It'll help us in terms of what you might be looking for in terms of follow-up resources. So then let's just get on to some questions. And I'm going to leave this here just on the background. I'll mention Pinpoint at the very end, but you sort of know where to find us and when. But I do want to get to, with the remaining time here, some of the questions you all dropped in here. So the first one, and Andy, this might be good to throw to you first, but I imagine we all might have thoughts, and it comes: if DAM is the system best equipped to manage images, why recommend to syndicate those out from the PIM? Cole, you talked about syndication as well. Can you talk about advantages and disadvantages of pushing images out to channels using DAM versus using PIM?
Absolutely. So if you don't have a PIM, use DAM. That makes sense. But in most cases, DAM was not developed for syndication in the same way. And syndication is a loaded term too, that's emerging. I mean, it's been around for a while, but it means different things to different organizations. PIM was built with the fundamental aspect of creating a different data set per channel that it needs. So an e-com site has different requirements than a print catalog, but both can be fed from the PIM. the DAM is typically going to be doing things like managing transformation of those images per those channels. That's also a way that they can work together. Some of that functionality can be native to a PIM as well, but inherently, a PIM is better suited for data syndication, for rules validation, and other things, as well as digital shelf analytics on the back end that validates that those things showed up correctly in the right channel. DAM has some fantastic attributes around its equivalent of digital shelf analytics too, which is helping people to understand what the ROI of their images are, if there are products that are being sold that have, what images are functioning the best. But that really gets back to that point of they're really great systems at doing different things, and PIM is it's better equipped overall to be doing syndication than DAM is.
And if I could just add on a bit, I think there's also the aspect of, for an Amazon, as an example, just one we all understand, that there can be hundreds of attributes that have to be mapped and transformed to meet the requirements of an Amazon, and they change per category, per channel. So there's so many things to keep in mind from a data standpoint that have to be mapped, and it's a product-centric view that the PIM has. With the DAM, it's really good at doing those transformations, but it could be as simple as sending that transformed image over to the PIM to slot in to the syndication that's already built on the PIM side. So there's a little bit less complication to worry about per category, per channel from an image standpoint, as there is from the potentially hundreds of attributes that have to be transformed.
Yep, awesome. And I'm going to go through some of the other questions here, and a couple more have come in, which is great. So I encourage everybody, we can stay on for the next 13 minutes if you have that many questions. We're happy to answer. So let's go to the next one. Can you provide some? I'll throw it maybe to you first, Cole. Can you provide some insight into what kind of legislative requirements are or will be put into place that will impact how we work within the DAM? No, I'll send it to you because you mentioned digital product passports. If you just want to sort of recap that, which is a loaded topic, and I bet we could do a webinar on that in the future coming up.
So it very much is a loaded topic, and it's something that is super top of mind for us. But I think when it comes to overall, the digital product passport is going to force companies to basically provide some way for consumers to have visibility on a bunch of different aspects of the supply chain. How recyclable is this product? Is it made from recycled materials? What was the energy output used to manufacture the materials that go into it? There's a lot of different things. And it's all going to have to be summarized into one neat little label, perhaps an RFID or a QR code, more likely a QR code that's going to have to be generated and attached to this product, which could change over time if the sourcing changes as well. So there's a lot of complications there. Where the DAM comes into play is potentially helping create that type of label or tag. I think as these things shift and as the regulations actually get written, we're going to be in conversation with partners like Binder, with partners like Intara to figure out the best solution to solve for this. We've already gotten started with some POCs with various companies in order to start building out our own solution to this on the product information side, but it's ever evolving, and I think it's hard to answer that question too specifically, but happy to have follow-ups with anybody who want to really do a deep dive.
Yeah, and
Definitely.
I can tag in here too, because
I was just going to say, Andy, do you want to add something? Yep.
Absolutely. I bet everybody on the call remembers GDPR. You can raise your hand virtually if you do remember GDPR around privacy that came from Europe, and there was a lot of concern about it. Nobody really knew what it meant in the U.S. And when the guidelines came out, we had legal look at them. We looked at them, pored over them. Nobody really understood them completely either. And I think that this is a situation that we expect to be very similar, but times 100. The message that we're giving our clients is, undoubtedly, we're not going to know all the requirements, but you do have to get your data house in order to be ready to sell on a global scale. And by the way, these types of initiatives, you typically see EU, then California, and then a couple other states that follow with similar legislation, just like with GDPR. So this stuff is coming, and the clients that have DAM and PIM are going to be the best equipped to manage those requirements the fastest and most efficiently. I cannot imagine being a $1 billion+ company with complex products trying to do this in Excel or some other system. It's just, because you're going to get data from your suppliers, you're going to need to get data from all over the place, manage it on a basis that you haven't had to before. So I don't think we can overstate the importance of this topic, even though it is one that we're learning about as it goes.
Awesome, thank you for that. We're going to answer a couple more here. One is, and I'll take this one first. How does company size play into adoption of this model, i.e. DAM and PIM integration? And so the one thing I'll say is it might feel like more of a priority the bigger or more complex the go-to-market approach is, number of brands, number of countries, number of channels, like I mentioned with this global house of spirit brands, right? But I will also say, I've seen customers 100 employees because they sell mostly online and they don't have brick and mortar stores, or they sell primarily on Amazon and other online channels, where company size in terms of employees is only one metric, but they're all of a sudden way into the, whether you measure it by revenue or you measure it by products sold or channels sold on. If you're operating primarily online, you can achieve that level of scale pretty quickly. So I've seen customers that might have 100 employees, but all of a sudden they're operating in many, many markets online. So I'm sure both of you might have some thoughts on that. I'll throw it to you maybe first, Andy.
I think you said that very well. It really does depend on the organization. Usually we do have some criteria for a use case for PIM as a data enrichment tool, for example, where if you're a product team of 2, then you probably are not the best candidate for it. But you could be a product team of 2 and have a really heavy syndication need. You're selling through 100 channels or 1,000 channels. We've had some manufacturers of consumer durables that are that way. They're a small team, $1 billion plus company, but they need to sell through mom and pop stores as well as every retail channel imaginable. Or you can have a company that's a lot smaller than that in terms of revenue that has a really great need around data. So I think that the core question, though, of integrating the 2 systems, if there is a need for PIM and a need for DAM, there's a need to put them together. And that's a full stop. That does not have to be a monolithic, scary project. It's really a lot more about the coordination of that and having a vision for achieving business objectives through the application of the people, process, and technology that we spoke about earlier.
Yeah, I'm going to echo both of you. I think that need and priority is a far more important aspect than size in this case.
Awesome. Thank you, Andy. Thank you, Cole. Last question, unless somebody wants to get one in the final minutes here, and I'll throw it maybe to you first, Cole, is does the marketplaces integration allow you to have custom product data flows in order to adapt the data sent to each marketplace?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's what our syndication engine is purpose built for, is to create sort of a custom output per channel, so that you set that mapping one time. You basically say, how does my data model need to be transformed in order to meet the requirements of the marketplace I'm trying to get the data to? And then it becomes an automated process after that, customizing the data exactly to that marketplace's requirements. And so adding a new product to that assortment, or updating a product, or changing the assortment entirely is as easy as just creating a rule, dragging and dropping, and pushing a button to syndicate out. And then if we do have we have API integrations with the companies that really are digitally mature enough for the most part to allow us to write those API integrations. So if that is the case, that's also going to be a 2-way street. So it's going to be bidirectional, and we are going to be receiving updates and changes from the marketplaces as they change their requirements as well. So you can add some automation in that sense as well, so when you need to maybe make some adjustments on your end, rather than just getting an invalid send and wondering why.
Cool. Andy, I'll let you, anything on marketplaces or that you've seen, feel free.
Yeah, I think that Cole covered it very well.
Cool.
Each marketplace is very different from each other in terms of those requirements, and we really just see them as unique channels. We think about things in terms of inbound channels where data is flowing in from in an organization. So that can be PLM, ERP, DAM, whatever. And then outbound channels. So where is the data got to go and how does it need to be transformed? And it is amazing, even in some very big organizations with some really well-known brand names, sometimes they have a full-time person that their only job is to manage the transformation of data for one marketplace or one big box retailer. And they know the things inside and out, but it's also a tremendous liability for those companies to not have that automated versus via software, because people make mistakes that machines don't. It's just, that's part of what human nature is. So absolutely, that's a key aspect of certainly the in-river PIM that is really excels at, but then PIMs in general are needing to be capable to do.
Absolutely. Thank you both for that. And so with that, that will wrap up our Q&A and wrap up our session here. I mentioned Pinpoint, we'll be at both. Pinpoint Americas coming up in April, Pinpoint Europe coming up in May. I know that the entire team will be there. Same with the CTAC team and others. We're really excited. We'll be on stage at both, and I imagine a lot on the folks on the call as well will be at one or both. So we're really hoping to see as many people as possible there this spring. So with that, I want to thank everybody who joined today and who was here for the better part of an hour. I think a conversation like this does warrant a lengthier discussion, but as we said, we could probably do another hour on each one of the topics we sort of hit on, right? So maybe that comes next from us. And I do want to thank especially Andy, yourself, and Cole for joining me today and for putting on this session.
Great. Thanks a lot, Brian. Thanks, Binder. Hope to see you at Pinpoint.
Thanks, everyone, for the opportunity, and we'll look forward to seeing you there.
Awesome. Well, thank you, everybody, again. Enjoy the rest of the day or the evening, depending on where you're at. Thank you.